Yeah, and I should tell the audience I was advocating for number 6, and Ian said no.
Well, I don't know
Because
whether
there could be, we can come up with.
Hello and welcome to episode 276 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast, a proud member of the Marketing Podcast Network. I hope you're well and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. I'm your host, Ian Truscott. I'm not a rockstar, but I am a CMO, and on this podcast I chat with a band of marketing chums who share their marketing street knowledge, which I hope will bring out the rockstar marketer in you. This week, marketing strategist and former Forrester Research Director Jeff Clark and I chat about events. We mentioned COVID, but don't worry, this isn't a conversation pre-recorded in 2022. It seems to have cast a long shadow, and of course, we share 5 effing tips. But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back after this word.
We'll be right back.
After this word.
When it comes to relevant content, you may have heard Jeff and me talk about the multis on this show. Multi-channel, multi-device, multi-persona, and multi-language. On that last one, let me ask, how confident are you that your content actually connects in every market? You're not sure? Well, it might be time to check out Phrase. In our experience, this stuff used to be hard, but Phrase makes it simple with its industry-leading AI localization platform that helps you deliver content in multiple languages without losing your tone, your message, or your mind. It automates the manual work, slashes review time, and gives you real data on what's working and where. Brands like Uber and Zendesk trust Phrase to scale their content across the globe and get it right every time. If you're serious about reaching more people and driving better results internationally, head over to phrase.com/MPN and take a look. That's phrase.com/MPN.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
Hello, Ian. Welcome to the Rockstar CMO studio.
Thank you very much, mate. I was patient there.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you finished your thought.
I was trying to be patient, and I waited for you to do the intro, and then you paused again. You catch me every week.
I don't remember the what the right way to do it is, so therefore
No, you're fine. It's probably me. I should just wait and then wait longer than I think I should.
the pregnant pause. So things are going well, and as I shared earlier, we're having another spate of rain after many spates of rain, and so the sunny days come in between, which today's not one of them. So just
keeps the humidity down, though, doesn't it? Up your way when
it gets humid. It's just not hot humid, and the bugs are out. Lots of mosquitoes. So
yeah.
So how about you?
Not so bad. I mean, mixed here as well. We've had rain showers and sunshine and more rain showers. So sounds very similar. The glorious sunshine of May and April seems to have passed. So I think that was our summer.
That's what I could never understand. It's like summer could appear in the middle of winter, and then winter appears in the middle of summer.
That's absolutely true. Mind you, I remember when I was up your way, well, almost up your way up in Connecticut, and when you say it rains, it absolutely rains. It's not like here where it sort of mizzles and drizzles. My experience of rain up your way is actual rain, like a monsoon.
Yeah, it's like, because we have a rain gauge out in the garden, and so we're always checking, and it's like, it started to rain, and then we look and we go, my gosh, we got an inch in that last hour, or whatever.
Wow.
And it's like, So
All right. Well, I don't know how to segue from the weather to this week's topic, which we promised the listener. Did we promise the listener 2 weeks ago?
I think we did promise the listener.
Yeah. So we've had some thoughts about events, and so I think that so we're going to share 5 tips. As always, 5 tips with us, isn't it, for successful events? And the kind of premise to start off with was, and it still seems strange to be talking about COVID, but I think it's cast a bit of a shadow over the event industry, and it's taken a while for attendance to come back. Probably as we've all been trained in our work lives, to move away from in person, and we can do things remotely. And it's probably more importantly to our bosses that maybe we don't need to fly places to get shit done.
But somehow we end up doing it anyway.
Well, and in these budget conscious times, that I don't know whether the event budget has quite come back either for us to attend or to host.
Agree.
And that's certainly, and one of the things I think that sort of triggered some of this conversation is there's some your old gang at Forrester. They did a Q1 study, the B2B state of events. And for the second consecutive year, and I have to read this, budgets are flat or down for 2/3 of events teams. Even among the 19% of organizations that have seen budgets increase, the reality is that due to inflation, they're almost certainly flat or down in real terms. So I guess we could have a conversation about whether events are still relevant in our B2B marketing mix, but we're going to like a step down from that. Let's assume that we are still going to do events. And I think the other thing about the budget thing is if the budget isn't there for these organizers, these Forrester clients, it's probably an indication the budget isn't there for attendees and sponsors too. So it's probably shrunk a bit, the whole event industry. So it seems that whether we're hosting events, sponsoring or attending, we need to make them work hard for their money. What say you, Jeff?
I say it's, COVID really did do a number on events, particularly things like trade shows and these big conferences. They were already kind of falling out of favor due to the expense.
Mm-hmm.
So they took a particular hard hit, and then everything went online. So as webcasts, Zoom forums, virtual conferences became, a thing. Mm-hmm. And the good news was it kind of forced marketers to get good at doing virtual conferences and events, and then, when people came back to doing live, like user conference or whatever, it's like, well, we're doing it, we're doing a hybrid version, right?
Yeah,
we're doing it live, and then we're also broadcasting sessions. And what I was thinking about was that, prior to COVID, it was always hard for me because in my past roles, I always had the events team, and, it was hard for us to justify adding virtual capabilities to a conference, mm-hmm. because the conference is expensive. Mm-hmm. The virtual part's even more expensive. But COVID forced to make it viable. Also, probably forced the pricing to come down a bit to make it more manageable. And budget and travel constraints, again through COVID, just has forced us to properly justify in a plan events, which is what we should have been doing in the first place. Mm-hmm. Make sure that they demonstrate a return as opposed to having to get that, the question at some exec meeting. It's like, does it really get the return? I mean, why are we spending, X $100,000 on going to X event?
Mm.
I think it's making us do our work.
I also think there's a point there that you were saying about getting good at virtual conferences, because I think as a marketing team and as a content marketer, you're if you do record the sessions and hold a virtual conference, then you have assets that you can sweat.
Absolutely.
And I think we'll get onto this in our tips a bit more. But yeah, and so you can get a bit more, you can rinse a bit more life out of your event because of the gone virtual. Plus, of course, I think, like you say, the technology became more available and cheaper, didn't it? So it was as it was expected, everybody was expecting to do it. But it's clear that planning is important and we need to choose the right events. And then our execution is important, whether we're sponsoring an event or hosting an event. So, as I mentioned earlier, as it's the editorial policy of the show, we have 5 tips when you're planning your events for the year. What's your number one, Jeff?
Yeah, and I should tell the audience I was advocating for number 6, and Ian said no.
Well, I don't know
because there could be, we could come up with 10.
That's
we make it in the future. So,
well, that actually, let's on that point is we probably should set out the premise right now. This show is about when you're planning events, and so you're looking at the year of events that you're either going to attend or you're either going to host. The sort of rabbit holes we were thinking about as me and Jeff were chatting about this is, what should you do if you're hosting an event? What are the 5 tips for that? And what tips should you do if you're sponsoring an event? So we'll probably cover those in future shows. But right now we're thinking about, you're looking at your year, you're deciding what events to go to and what events to host, right? So what's number 1?
Number 1 is make each event part of an existing, or it could be, I guess, a new campaign. So events shouldn't be looked at as kind of a one-off topic or tactic. You're thinking about the buyers you're trying to engage or the customers you're trying to engage. What are their needs? How does that fit into a campaign? And so, you want to integrate the event within the tactic mix. What's happening, what's happening as far as the campaign is concerned, pre-event, post-event, that ensures that maybe the event, which is, a key milestone, is successful and is contributing to the success of the campaign. Yep. So reaching beyond the event, I think this was one when we were putting the notes together, you came up with, is that the social media posts, the wrap-ups, the tagging influencers, making the event a, mini marketing content project, because the people who, who may be interested were not able to attend. And also, you want to project your intellectual property, your thought leadership, your brand. And so by reusing some of those assets, I think it helps. It helps with those campaign goals. Now, the one exception that I want to note is that, like a user conference or sometimes a partner conference is typically an exception because it covers all the segments that you that you serve. So, however, your campaigns, your messages, and the assets, probably come together within the user conference, but it kind of becomes its own thing. And even user conferences are not necessarily selling events. You're always selling, so you've got to be concerned about how you're engaging with those clients as they're making decisions about your product.
I think you might be doing yourself a bit of a disservice there. I think that point is really strong, making each event part of an existing campaign. I think it might depend on what you define as the campaign, because I think a user conference should also, if your user conference doesn't fit in with your broadest campaign that you have and doesn't fit into that, there's something wrong with the campaign, isn't it? Because you're feeling like you need to tell your users a different story to what you're going to tell the market in general. And I believe that has happened in a vendor that you and I both worked for, right? Which was that the overall marketing strategy was aimed at the CMOs, but of course we had user conferences and things that were aimed at the practitioner. But those two messages weren't necessarily completely tied together as they should have been. So I think it's a really good point you're making there. I think that I would stick with that first point you made, which is every event needs to be part of some sort of messaging and reinforcing some sort of messaging campaign.
I was going to just to add on, if you think of your campaign hierarchy or infrastructure, is that there's kind of a big overall message about the company and its overall brand, and so the user conference has got to line up with that. And then anything you're doing that's kind of at the next level down for specific buying interests, that's where you kind of meld that into, but you don't let those dominate the higher level message. Yeah,
and I can't remember whether we get to it in one of the other 5 points, but I think that if you stand up in front of your user conference with your new messaging or whatever it is that you're testing as a marketing team, that is going to be really important, the feedback you get from that, isn't it? So, and that's the nice thing about in-person events, isn't it? Is that you get that visceral feedback about what you're doing. And I also think that your point there about the fact this needs to fit into a campaign also applies to webinars and small round tables. I think too many times we do these sort of random acts of event content, and actually every single thing should be in lockstep with this coherent narrative of your campaign. And I think, and the other thing I think it really helps with, and it's saying to the point that we were just saying about client conferences and user conferences, is that it gives, if you've got other assets that are related to this topic, you can keep the conversation going because you can keep sharing that, a new blog post, new white paper, new ebook, whatever it is. And you get that, don't you? You keep that kind of thing, keep the messaging going. And therefore your event isn't like one and done.
Absolutely.
So cool. Yes. Yes, good start there.
We're laying the foundation.
I think so. And also, I'm looking forward to this one. So that's our first. It's not a random act of marketing, it's tied to something. What's number 2?
Number 2 is define event goals. So, and I think you made a point when we were talking about this beforehand, this is like, goals is like either, one or two in our various steps and tips.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you've got different types of events, so you're trying to select the best ones that meet the goals of the campaign. But, if we think about the different types of goals that events, help fulfill, then that helps us with choosing what we're trying to which events we're trying to either attend or try to host. So you think about engaging new prospects. So that's typically where you're going out to an audience that you somebody else has put together for you, or you're doing trade shows, you're doing networking events, but it also could include webinars. If you're got prospect lists and stuff like that, and you're trying to engage them. So, you're holding webcasts on your thought leadership topics. And so, if you're looking for those new prospects, this is also where, you want to make sure sales is integrated with what you're trying to accomplish. They're either at the booth and one-on-one meetings, they're attending the online sessions, and, your metrics are really around, leads or target account engagement, post-event engagement. You're trying to find people where opportunities can be created and attach that engagement to the opportunity. So kind of a second set of goals would be deepening relationships. And that's where we're talking about user conferences. Same thing could be true for partner conferences or advisory boards, C-level forums with kind of key customers. This is all about engaging them, and looking for meetings, conversations, feedback, whether it's quantitative or qualitative, that becomes a key part of your marketing efforts. And the metrics are around, kind of the opportunity, typically opportunity follow-up. It's not as much creating new opportunities as perhaps follow-up, maybe looking for upsell and cross-sell opportunities, but also looking for customer satisfaction. What's our net promoter scores? Can we do things that increase both satisfaction and an NPS score? Kind of a third category of event goals is building awareness. And so this is typically where you'd go to an analyst conference or some, well-known industry conference or trade show where, you're going to get a sponsorship, but maybe you get a booth and you get logos and you've got handouts, and hopefully you can get speaking opportunities. So, what you're looking for, the goals, the metrics for those would be like session attendance, post-event engagement. Again, could be leads, target account engagement, and looking for any changes as you go through the year, any changes in some of the brand attributes that you're trying to measure. So for each of these, you really want to try to develop quantifiable goals. And there's no reason to be kind of loosey-goosey on it, because particularly if you've done an event before, you've done similar events, you should be able to say, this is the reason we're going, and these are the goals that we're looking for. And sometimes an event might have multiple goals. You're both building awareness and you are looking for new opportunities. So, and it just as I was thinking about this one, I worked at a company where target account engagement was like the major measure of almost everything we did. So if we actually went to like a big international financial services show, it was always about getting meetings. It was always about, building relationships with different members of accounts and then tracking what happened after those meetings.
Yeah, cool. I thought you were going to go into 5 effing things about defining events goals there for a minute. But,
future rabbit hole.
Yeah, it does seem that way. And I was going to make the joke that we always talk about define the goals as probably the first of our 5 effing things whenever we talk about whatever it is. So I was surprised to see this at number 2. I mean, I completely agree. And also there's some nuances there about, some softer goals around influencer relationships and analyst relations, which I think you've covered there really, isn't it? It's when you're deepening those relationships. And sometimes you might sponsor an event or you might attend an event because it gives you face time with an analyst.
Absolutely.
And you're not really going to build a lot of pipeline from that. And I mean, as you were saying, you were talking about your experience of working with a disciplined target account model. I mean, if you remember when we, did we work together? Did you work with Emily Nichols?
Yeah.
Who's now at Cycle?
Yeah.
She was incredibly disciplined as a field marketer in terms of goals that she was looking for whenever we did events together. And I always liked that, she would have that all figured out before you'd spend any money on an event. She'd have it figured out about what that goal was in terms of leads and all that kind of good stuff. So you're absolutely right.
And that helps you defend against the two pushbacks. Absolutely. Why are we doing this event? Or also, I want to add this event to our calendar. Exactly. And then you're like, okay, we could add it, but what are we trying to accomplish and who are we going to get in front of?
Absolutely, yeah. And I spent an awful lot of money when I was at SenseShare on a major event, and doing it was a brand awareness vanity project for the CEO, which was fantastic. But let's be honest with each other about whether this is going to create any lead generation in this quarter. It's going to be, it's a long-term brand play that we're going for. So I think it's good. So I think number one, we're saying that we're going to all the events need to be part of a campaign. We're defining the goals for each event. So what's number 3?
Determine who can deliver your audience. Is that you or is that an independent host? And I know when we were talking about this, there's a number of ways you can phrase this, but it's like, you in your campaign, you're trying to reach those certain goals, and it's like, okay, so. Can we bring an audience? So if, obviously if you're doing a user partner conference, you're extending your, that's your audience. But it's like, if you're looking for, new people at existing accounts or new accounts, then that's where it's like, are we going to do webcasts? Because that's kind of become the go-to tactic these days. You put your industry expert or your thought leader out in front of an audience, but, do you have the prospect list to bring an audience to the show, or do you have to work with another organization to pull an audience? And so I remember an IT company I've been working with recently where they were going after a number of different types of organizations, mostly public sector, private education, and it's like there just were no good lists out there, and so we had to partner with the organizations, and they would put on the conferences, they would put on the webcasts, they would help us get to their audience. And then over time, we started to be able to build a prospect list and because of our own existing customers, that we could do it ourselves. But at the outset, it's like, we had to rely on a partner to bring us that audience.
Yeah, no, I like the way you shape this number 3, actually, after we were talking about how this looks, because that's exactly what an event is for, isn't it? It's to bring the audience to you. And it is, who is it? Either you're feeding your existing audience or you're trying to grow your audience, and you self-hosting. If you're going to put on an event, it needs a marketing plan of its own to understand how you're going to pull in that new audience. So often we're working with partners. And I think that's also interesting, even if you're just doing a webinar with somebody, is who's bringing the audience to this webinar. And also it's a good qualification, isn't it, of your speakers and the people you want to bring in. What are they going to contribute? Are they going to contribute audience? Are they going to contribute expertise? What is it that they're bringing to the party? So I think that's really good.
I sorry to interrupt you, but it's like also brand association. It's like if you're working with the industry trade organization in the region, then it's like, oh, they must have thought these guys were worthwhile.
Absolutely. But also, I mean, you can get a bit carried away with that, because I know of a vendor that spent an awful lot of money having Seth Godin on a webinar, and that everybody that's showing up is only interested in Seth Godin. They're not they're not interested in you and your product, and so you can index too far the other way. Great, correct. I've got a great audience, but that isn't the audience that you can engage with. But so I think that number 3 is really good. So number 3, determine who can deliver your audience you are an independent host, I think is great. Oh, the other point I wanted to make as well, sorry, is when you're thinking about that audience, is don't just choose the typical events that all your competitors are going to. I've seen great success with going to adjacent events where the buyers are there and you may be the only purveyor of this particular solution or technology or whatever it is. And you'll have some great conversations, and partly because they're probably tired of having 6 conversations about CRM. And there you are on the end of the aisle talking about web content management. And they go, oh, this is interesting.
That's a very good point.
Whatever it is, So yeah.
Well, I think you contributed tip number 4, because events touch a lot of different personas within the buying audience we're looking for. So, what do you have to add to this?
Thank you very much, Jeff. I was really trying to pick your brains about what you thought of this, but now you've put the spotlight on me. One other thing on that audience thing before I plunge into this. I actually sponsored an event once, and the organizers wanted us were frustrated that we couldn't sell enough tickets and bring an audience. And I'm like, no, that's not how this deal works. We give you money, you provide the audience, we provide the sponsorship. We don't. What are you bringing to this relationship otherwise? Yeah. But anyway, so yes, number 4. So what I was thinking about was, if we're in this sort of scenario where we're sort of looking at events over the year and what we're actually doing, one of the things we need to think about is we need to consider the audience spread across those events. So, and looking at all of your buyer personas, your customers, your buyers, your influencers and all that, and are you touching each of them at the event? Now, you're not necessarily going to go, oh, well, I need to equally address all of those people. I mean, you need to split the event budget, effort, resources based on your goals. So like you were saying, it might be the most important thing for this particular company this year is awareness. So I need to index 70% at least of my budget into awareness. But still, I think you need to consider things like awareness and not just awareness, but retention and all that other and revenue generating events, and try and touch on all these different audiences. And also, you may have other brand goals, not just awareness. So it might be that you want to be seen to be supporting or championing a community. So I've worked at vendors that have supported like email marketing communities, for example. You knew you weren't going to get any leads from it, but you were supporting the community. Same with developer community or communities of customer service professionals, or as you mentioned, industry bodies and that kind of stuff. So I think that's something, and you're not going to, and when you look at the goals, to your point number 2, right, you're not going to necessarily see those goals as in revenue related goals, but you might see goals in terms of raising your profile within a particular community. And to your point earlier that you were saying about being in the campaign, all of these things need to have that same red thread of the campaign running through them. So even if you're doing a developer conference and a CMO roundtable dinner, there needs to be that red thread of your main message going from one to the other, because I think that then makes everything. It's what we were talking about just now, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And also it sort of also makes the point I was just making about adjacent events as well. So it's not just being all the typical events your competitors are at. This gives you an opportunity to be hanging with the users or the practitioners or the finance people or somebody kind of different.
I think this is a great point, and particularly if you're selling to kind of complex buying groups where, as you're mentioning, you could have developers, you could have C-level executives, you could have the champions, and they, that maybe they come together at one event. Chances are they may not. And so, this is actually one of the things that makes the budgeting a challenge, because it's like if you're looking at your audience and all the ways you can, touch them with virtual or live events, then, you could come up with quite a long list. And so you got to be choosy, and you got to, you've got to prioritize this. It kind of gets back to a lot of things we've said about, working with personas and campaign planning. It's like prioritize who are the key people to get to, and then work your budget accordingly. Yeah,
that's why you need honesty about who's driving the business, right? That you're getting, and who's genuinely influencing the business within inside an organization you're selling into, because and understanding who are your sponsors and all that stuff. Because, and this, we've talked about this a few times, if you're aiming everything at the CMO and the C-suite and they're not actually driving the opportunities within the business. This is your opportunity to kind of thank those sponsors, isn't it? The people people in the middle of the organization that are pushing your idea up and down at the same time, right? So yeah. So that's 4. So we've done 4. So why don't you take us home with the 5th?
The 5th. Planning and execution is a cross-functional collaboration. So, and this has just been my experience of, if you try to, I was at a couple of companies where we try to go to the relevant Forrester and Gartner and whatever other analyst conferences, and it's like, it's not that big a deal. But then you realize, if you're just organizing it with, the event team and the AR team, and you leave everybody else out, then, things start to fall apart. So you got to think about, who are you bringing in as speakers? How is sales engaged? How is the social team helping with the pre, during, and post event postings? Again, you talked a little bit earlier about reusing assets. How's the digital team involved with taking what we've done on at the event and put it online? So there's lots of people, and so if you think about maybe your core event team and your extended event team, you want to make sure everybody is on board. And some things that, as I said earlier, may appear to be simple to execute. It's like if you don't get everybody involved, because these do tend to be kind of cross-functional impacts, you're going to be caught short in the end. And the other thing that is important is working with your tech team, your operations team, because there are so many, and this is one of the potential rabbit holes. I mean, there's so many complexities around the technology with either running or participating in an event, from, pre-registration communications, registration, lead engagement capture, hosting, virtual sessions of virtual event platforms, kind of the CDPs and the customer data platforms, the AI tools that can take all that engagement and pull it together and put it in the CRM, so what kind of impact you're having. And I worked at a company where we really tried to capture at our user conference everything from the pre-event interactions through the registrations, exhibit attendance, session attendance, NPS scores. And making sure we're turning that into actionable information, so we could bring it back to the team, the extended team that we're working with, and show the success of the event.
Yeah. And I think this underlines what we were saying before, which is that an event requires marketing of its own as well. You mean you're talking there about having the press, the comms and press people involved, because you want to get it out there beforehand, you want to get it out there afterwards. You've got your analyst relations, you've got everybody involved in this. And I think that it reminds me of some of the conversations we talked about before about these sort of tiger teams and frontline marketing teams and that kind of, and having these cross-functional teams. And I think an event is the other thing about events. If you do a large event and you get this bit right, you do create a nice little community within your business of folks that are working together on this thing, and you'll get together on the stand, and if it's in another city or something, you go out for dinner. It's a really nice little team. It's a good opportunity to create a little team, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's a great point, because usually when you're done with these things, I mean, it depends on the size of the event, but usually when you're done, you're so exhausted. It's like, I need a drink and a big dinner. It's like, I didn't get a chance to eat for 3 days,
That's so true. All right, so let me run through these 5 tips. So the first one is make each event part of an existing campaign. Number 2, define the event's goals, which I'm surprised slipped down to number 2, as it's normally our number 1. And number 3, determine who can deliver your audience. You are an independent host. Number 4, consider the audience spread across events and make sure you're touching all of your audience. Number 5, planning and execution with a cross-functional collaboration. So that leaves us with our last agenda item. Jeff, what song are we going out with today?
We're gonna leave with Pink's "Get This Party Started," which I think got her started back in 2001. Because all I could think of was like the phrase "I'm coming out, so better get this party started." It's like, so we're gonna go to the big Gartner event. So let's get this party started and figure out how to do it right.
Absolutely love it, man. And there was no argument. I didn't even
Yeah, there was
suggest
no
any
other
other songs.
suggestions.
It's just
I didn't even
perfect.
have any other suggestions.
It's perfect. Thank you, mate. And next week, we've got something special happening, haven't we?
We're talking to our old buddy, Simon Daniels.
Yeah. So it's a freeway conversation next Wednesday. So I hope that people will join us for that. So I'll see you then, Jeff, in the studio with Simon. And yeah, so I'll see you then.
Yeah.
All right, mate.
All right. Awesome.
See you, mate. Jeff, and that was Pink getting the party started. And as I'm concerned about being sued, sorry, I couldn't let her do much more than just get started. So that's a wrap on episode 276 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. Thanks to Jeff for his insight and for you for putting your dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track and jiving along with us. I've been your host, Ian Truscott. You can find links to me, Jeff, and the Forrester Research referred to there in the show notes on rockstarcmo.com, where you can also find our blog, newsletter, and all of our previous episodes. We'd love to hear from you, so please reach out via the website or LinkedIn. Just search Rockstar CMO, and I'm sure you'll find us. But please mention that you're a listener if you'd like to connect. Coming up, I have Robert booked for our virtual bar on Friday, so that will drop on Saturday. And we have a special studio show next week, as we mentioned, featuring Jeff and friend of the show, and also former Forrester analyst Simon Daniels. I hope you join us for both of those here on Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Hennika Watkis-Porter hosts The Entrepreneurial You, empowering entrepreneurs with insights on leadership, business, and success. Hennika, tell listeners what to expect from your show.
So we provide innovative business strategies and practical solutions to common entrepreneurial challenges.
And where can people subscribe?
Find us at hennikawatkisporter.com, as well as the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcasts.net, or search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.